Okay, so just to quickly introduce ourselves, I know that we've been in Zooms with a lot of y'all lately, so I feel like we're all like Zoom BFFs now. I used to say we were all like Zoom BFFs, but now, I mean, not Zoom, Twitter. Now we're Zoom BFFs.
Right.
Um, so I'm Shelly Shaw. I have been working at Service Center for almost 4 years, and I am a digital learning coach. Very passionate about blended learning. Charles and I have been doing blended learning for nearly 4 years. And then I taught in Keller ISD and Mumford ISD before that. I was in the classroom for about 17 years. Did all kinds of different things, self-contained, ELA, electives, GT, all kinds of different crazy things.
And then Charles Cooper, been at the Service Center for, I think it's going on 6 years. The years blur. Campus coach, taught 11 years high school seniors. And for those of you that have taught secondary before, when those high school seniors are walking into your classroom, it's like a free year for them. It's like, oh, I've already graduated. I've passed the standardized tests here in Texas, called the STAR test. And so I had to learn how to trick them into learning my content, and that's where I got my street name, Big Tricky. I actually have it on a grill that I wear on weekends, but we won't talk about that. And Shelly and I have been doing this blended learning thing for about 4 years. We've got connections with MIZ, the Math Innovation Zone in Austin, Texas. Through TEA, we've got connections with Raise Your Hand Texas. And so we've seen lots and lots and lots of, I guess, types of blended learning. So as you guys know, if you haven't dipped your toes into blended learning, it's a meta strategy that can look differently just depending on what kind of resources, what are you teaching, how many students. And so we've seen a lot of instances across the state of Texas, and we're happy to share our stories with you, and we can't wait to hear your stories as well.
And I just went ahead and put that up while Charles was finishing up. So if y'all want to access these slides, links are in the slides, so it's easier to get to all the links since we can't click on them in the chat box anymore. It's bit.ly/plan for the win 2. Last week was plan for the win. This week is plan for the win 2. And I hear that our friends at Raise Your Hand Texas are supposed to be making their big announcement today.
Today.
I already looked on their Twitter to see if they announced it yet.
Yeah, I just looked on their Facebook.
They're announcing their 20 districts that are going to get their big grant. So we're excited. We have several around here that are up for it. Misty, if y'all find out while we're on here, you're going to have to just turn on your mic and announce it.
Well, it's $300,000, right, per district?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, anybody could use that.
Right. All right. I see lots of people jumping in here. I'll type that in the chat too if you haven't gotten in yet. So one thing that, we know we're all thinking about is, what's going to happen when we go back to school in the fall, and how are we going to handle it? So really this kind of series that we're doing is about planning for the win, because even though we've been tossed into these crazy times, we can still make this a win-win situation is kind of the way we look at it. So we're going to quickly go through just a little tiny recap of last week in case you weren't here last week. So you'll kind of be on the same page as far as terminology, and then we're going to jump into some new stuff. So Charles, I'll let you take over with the potholes.
Yeah, previously, last year, we used the example of Swiss cheese learning. When you take a look at a slice of Swiss cheese, there are holes in it. And we thought a more violent and maybe better example of the idea that we're trying to get to is more akin to potholes in the road. When you're driving and you're playing with the radio, singing a song, talking to somebody on your phone, hopefully not texting. Sometimes we don't pay attention exactly to the road, and we'll hit potholes that are sometimes small, sometimes big. But when you don't see those potholes coming, it can be a jarring experience. It doesn't necessarily destroy your car, but it does, to some extent, give you some PTSD. Can damage your car. And we kind of relate that to that summer slide that students go through. They come into your classroom at the beginning of the next year, and you don't know where those potholes are as far as their content acquisition from the previous year. And so what blended learning allows you to do, when you push the learning onto the students, you put them at the center of the planning. So you're planning for the learning, not planning for the teaching. Then the students are a little more aware of those potholes than you are. And the students can begin to fill in their own gap. So instead of having one teacher trying to fill in multiple gaps for multiple students, you put that onus or that responsibility on them, and then you guide them through closing those gaps, so that it's, in a certain sense, it's less work on you, it's more work on the students. And who said this, but I think it was Alan November who said, whoever does the work does the learning. And so that's kind of what blended learning does, is it pushes that responsibility onto the students.
And also, Catlin Tucker said that same thing in this book, Charles.
Well, look at that.
Okay. So then we shared our, last week we shared our model of blended learning, and so this comes from the Christensen Institute, not this image, but this idea of, they say that 3 things need to be there to be blended learning. You need to have at least some part online, at least some part needs to be face-to-face in a brick and mortar, and at least, and then you have to have flexibility in pace, place, path, and time. And so that part is all true. And last week we had a question, could this be considered blended learning, what we're doing right now? And it's really not, because we're not having that brick and mortar part going on. So this is really thinking forward into the fall. But the other part that we felt that is really important to point out is that it all needs to be grounded in data, because if you just let kids pick, here's a whole bunch of options, pick whatever, and it's not grounded in some form of data, then, there's really no point to it. It's just giving them choice, which is not a bad thing, but it's not going to help them grow necessarily in the areas that they need to. So that's why we created this visual, because we want our goal to be that personalized learning so that it can identify where those potholes are, as Charles was talking about. All right, so on this slide, this was our blended learning cards, and the link is here for you to access those. And we showed those last week as well. And so here's just an example. Those are just some cards we created. We actually have, and there's some pictures in those slides that you can access of when we use them in real life. We actually have like hands-on cards that people can manipulate. But you can also do it virtually like this, and just kind of take the cards and use arrows. And this is kind of a way to plan lessons out and look at what might some of these pathways be, and what might a blended learning lesson look like, and just offering that flexibility that you might not get going down a piece of paper on a regular lesson plan.
Yeah, and these aren't limited to elementary classrooms. You can do this at the high school, middle school, professional development.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's jump into some new stuff. Did anybody have any questions about what we just, if you weren't in here with us last week, maybe have any questions? I know we just went over that real quick. Just wanted to kind of make sure everybody's on the same starting point. Hey, y'all feel free to add questions as we go if y'all think of any. So we wanted to kind of start with a little bit of just some research to share about, where this thinking is coming. So today, as we start thinking about, we're going to we're going to kind of scaffold into some of this. We're not going to jump all the way 100% into complete blended learning ideas yet. But it actually comes from some different research that she shares in the book, but I pulled it from this book, Caitlin Tucker's newest book. It's where I pulled this little chart from on page, I put 411. It's supposed to be 41. I'll change that in a minute. But anyways, it's supposed to be 41. But she kind of breaks down metacognition, and she talks about that in order for kids to own their own learning, we have to make them aware of metacognition. And so she breaks it down into two parts, having knowledge of it and then having regulation of it. So I kind of put this knowledge part in purple because that's sort of where we're going to focus today, that until kids understand cognition and understand how they learn, they can't really regulate it. So everything we're going to talk about today falls in that. And, knowing how do I learn best, knowing what tools are available to me, and then knowing why I'm going to pick doing something the way I'm doing it. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today. All right.
So here's a learning style assessment that I actually use with my college students. Before I start my semester off with them, I give them this quiz, and it's a 30-question quiz. And what I ask them to do is not to overthink. Don't spend a lot of time, read the question, and then choose which one of the learning styles or which one of the answers seems to reflect who you are as a learner. And so I just don't want them to overthink, because then you're just like, oh, well, I do like to get up and walk around, but I also like to look at stuff. So it's not like 1,000,000% accurate, but we don't need 1,000,000% accuracy here. We just want to know, generally speaking, what is your predilection? What do you tend to favor when you're learning? And so what we're going to ask you guys to do is to actually access this. So if you wouldn't mind going to that bit.ly/learning style quiz 1. And Shelly, we decided that we were going to ask them to do this, right?
I thought we said we were just going to show it, because didn't you say it would take a little while to do?
Okay, then we'll show it. So when you go to this website and you click on Start the Assessment, it's just going to ask you 30 questions. Now they've narrowed down the learning styles to 3, but this is one of those pieces of data in blended learning that I think is crucial. Do your students even know that there are different learning styles? And do they know what kind of learning style they prefer? I've got a stepdaughter who was doing some math homework yesterday, and the teacher decided to gamify it. But my stepdaughter was just like, Alexandria was just like, I don't want the game. I just want to do the math. And so kudos to the teacher for, changing things up during this distance learning era. But there are some students who are just going to want to do the math problems. Some students want to be entertained while they learn the math. And other students may want to, work a few problems, get up, walk around the house to get some exercise, and then come back and do that again. And so even just the learning style is going to be an important piece of data that you can use as an educator or a PD developer to get your students moving in a certain direction.
Okay. Whoops. My deal got a little messed up. Sorry.
And then while this is loading, the moral of the story here is any data is good data. It doesn't have to be just content based. And then next week, Jordan went through our Blended Learning Academy about 3 years ago. And she is a master at Pathways. She teaches middle school social studies, and she's actually gotten her entire team on board, and I believe she's starting to move the entire campus to this idea of blended learning. She's in Northwest ISD in Justin, Texas, and she started developing a pathway in our year 1 Blended Learning Academy. It's now 3 years later, and she's really developed it into a really cool It kind of looks like a shoots and ladders kind of game, board game. But the kids are 1,000,000% engaged. She had 2 pathways the last time we checked in with her, and she was developing a 3rd pathway. So next week, she's already agreed to pop in and kind of share some of her secrets on how to develop pathways within a blended learning environment.
And so we're sharing that with y'all because what we're going to do today is sort of a way to scaffold up to that level, because if you see what she's doing now, it could be a little overwhelming because she's so far into it. So today we're going to kind of talk about, what could some first steps be, and then we'll get deeper into it next week. All right. So we're going to do a Mentimeter with y'all real quick. So let me pop that up.
If you guys have had any experiences with pathways or with choice boards, please chime in.
Okay, so let me pop this up. So we're going to talk about, this should say choice boards, not just choice. Choice boards. So we're going to talk about some choice boards, and what we want to know is kind of what are 3 words that you associate with choice boards. So you're going to go to, if you'll open a new tab, or if you want to do it like on, an iPad or a phone, menti.com, and then you'll enter this code 220611, and just type in what are 3 words that you associate with choice boards. Just so so we're collecting data here from y'all. We want to kind of see what your thoughts about choice boards are, so we kind of know where to jump in with what we talk about with them. And when y'all start typing in some words, this will create a word cloud. As y'all can see, it's starting to pop up there. So we're getting some good words popping out big in the center: freedom, choice, ownership, options.
Lots of differentiation. And one of the things that I think, Shelley, you touched on this earlier, a choice board can kind of be a pathway, but usually it's what allows for flexibility within a pathway, if that makes sense.
Oh, I like that somebody sent an emoji to the deal. I love emojis.
Emojis are your love language.
I know. Charles is like, oh, great. And Bitmojis are even more my love language. Okay, so thank y'all for sharing that. Here, I'm going to let Charles talk about it because this is from his yeah. I don't know which child, one of your children's classes.
This is Charlie, my middle school son. Charlie was born deaf, and he got cochlear implants when he was a little over a year old, and then the second ear was implanted about 3 or 4 years old. And so he's always had this sort of as far as language, expressive language, that kind of stuff, he's always been kind of lagging behind. And one of the incredible things that I've discovered during this whole COVID-19 thing is that he loves choice boards, and it allows him to really digest the instructions at his own pace, and he can produce a wonderful artifact when it isn't, on a daily schedule, you have math from like 8:45 to 9:30 or 9:45 or whatever it is. When you allow him, so history, I have a master's degree in social studies. He hates history. And so it's one of those areas where I'm like, oh, come on, it's so wonderful. He's not a huge fan of history, but once he started playing around with these choice boards, I mean, he just flowered and blossomed and totally into it because he doesn't have that pressure of keeping up with kids during that 45 or 50-minute period. He can work on this, take a break if he needs to, come back to it. And the fact that Miss Davidson color coded this and put it under different categories like communication, reading, writing. So each week she'll give a choice board, and then he chooses 2 out of 5 to do. And if he wants to do a third one, like for a little bit of extra credit, he can. Of course, he doesn't because this is not his favorite class. But he has done so much better having that flexibility and time that it's really, really blown me away. But this is just an example of something that was issued out by his teacher, I believe last week or the week before. Love that she was given resources. How do you submit it? And then the bullet points under the categories. Here's how you do it. Here's what I'm looking for. And then twice a week, she'll offer live webinars. She'll record those so that even if he can't make it, he can go back and listen to it at his own time. And so I just love this.
Okay, so, so Charles and I created our own choice board that's kind of on the topic of choice boards. It's just a quick example, but we're going to give y'all just a second to kind of look over it. So what we want y'all to do, and hopefully y'all are in the slides, and if you're not in the slides, let me pop that link in there again. It was bit.ly / plan for the win 2, because the directions are in here. Charles, how many breakout rooms do you think we should do? We've got 31 people.
31.
Like
do
5, 6.
I was going to say 7 would put 4, maybe
Okay.
6. Let's do 6. See how.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to break y'all out into some rooms so y'all can be in some smaller groups and have some discussions, because we don't want to just be the only ones talking. So here's your kind of guidelines in there. We're not going to leave y'all in there forever, just a couple of minutes, and we'll pop in and out. But whoever has the next birthday coming up can be the communicator. So when y'all come back, you can share out, give us, an update about what your group talked about. You're going to examine the choice board, this one. Oops, hold on. This one that we just showed y'all. And then you're going to talk about how you would use a choice board such as this with your class. So kind of talk about how did we organize that choice board? What data do you think we based it on? And then how would you use something like that with your class? And then what changes or improvements would you make to that if you were going to use a choice board such as that?
And by the way, you're not going to hurt our feelings by offering up suggestions. Shelly and I intentionally didn't do a choice board. Like if you'll notice on slide 17, that teacher added a link to resources and things like that. We intentionally left off some stuff. So please don't think that you're going to hurt our feelings if you go, hey, where are the resources?
Yeah. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Is the bit.ly on here? I have the wrong cases. So yeah, I'll put the bit.ly in again. It's bit.ly / plan for the win 2. That's our link to this. Okay, so I'm going to pop y'all into breakout rooms if y'all don't have any questions. So directions are on this slide, and then your choice board is on this slide. All right, breakout rooms. Hey,
Esther,
everybody.
I'm so sorry, Esther, that cut you off right in the middle of your sentence.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
We were chatting along.
Good. I tried to pop into all the rooms. I didn't pop into yours, Charles, because you were in there, but I popped into the other rooms. So who wants to start out and share what your group was talking about our choice board that we have here? I heard some good conversations. Let me share the screen again so y'all can see it.
I'll go on ahead and start because we ended really on a good high with Misty was talking about. We were just talking about the ways to incentivize the students, and Misty made the comment about maybe having some must do's, can do's, and making sure that there's something on there that the student can really showcase their talents, and letting them really, kind of be the expert in something. And we also really liked these types of categories. These are different types of categories than what a lot of us have seen, as far as how the activities are divided. Was there anything else, guys? I can't remember. We had some good conversation.
We talked about with that you were talking about the different ways to get the kids to hit multiple things. I think it was you, Anne, that brought up that your campus has been using kind of a tic-tac-toe method. And if you kind of pick certain assignments, and if you kind of get that line on a tic-tac-toe, that's an incentive for something as well. So we were just trying to brainstorm different ways where the students can not only hit their strengths, but try something also that may not be a strength so that they can build that up.
Correct. And we've been just talking about with our secondary, just our students being at this point really becoming kind of disengaged, and maybe putting at the center, the option to jump into the virtual hangout at least one day in the week.
That's a good
as
idea.
a way, if it were a tic-tac-toe type setup.
Mm-hmm. Another group? Oh, go ahead, Charles.
I was just going to say, I've seen with tic-tac-toe boards, you'll have like high blooms, middle blooms, low blooms, switched around in a way where a student has to do like a high, middle, and low each. And I think that's a great way to, so everybody has that, beginner level, then they can scale up.
Yeah. So
I had an idea.
Oh, go ahead.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Lori Gracie came out with some research, and she talked about the learning styles. It's nice to know your learning style, but try not to lean in too much or too often on that learning style. So maybe I liked how picking the levels of blooms, I kind of like that even better. But I was thinking if I pick two of my learning style and one that stretches myself, that's not my learning style necessarily, being given those options. The other thing I was thinking of was making sure that the students know what these activities are grounded or anchored in. So making sure that the objective or whatever is on there, great questions to help them answer those questions out of these activities that are leveled questions, but some of those things to help them ground themselves into the content and specifically what they're supposed to be learning.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea too of stretching, instead of, if I'm auditory, instead of me just doing the 3 little elephant ear ones and that's it, I can only do 2 elephant ears, and then I have to do an eyeball or a hand to go with it.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful not to have them just identify with that throughout their learning career.
Love that.
Yeah, and even within, let's say that they do choose something that is a strength of theirs. Hopefully, we're designing the task so that it is high blooms within visual, high blooms within kinesthetic. So I like that idea of just layering those two and
well, and there's no reason you can't double code something and maybe even mix the blooms with the learning style.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And like mixing, like each elephant, maybe one's low, one's medium, one high. Is that what you're saying? Love that. Okay. And does another group want to share your communicator? We have some shy groups today. Or did we already hit everything y'all talked about?
Had my mic muted. Esther, did you want to jump in and talk about what you shared with us?
While we're waiting for Esther to get her mic turned on, I love what Lord just wrote. When you see that they're choosing only one or two types of styles, that's data. I love that. Yes, it is data. And that tells you need to work on maybe that other style, developing that with them. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's
Great.
awesome.
We just talked about using the choice boards, applying it basically to our different classrooms, different subjects, I should say. In my case, I mentioned how we have to use the different modes of communication, and so giving them options in how to use it with the input and the output that they have. So it allows them to choose what they like, and it's all within, the same, kind of hitting on the same concepts, excuse me, that they need to show proficiency in. Kind of tricking them into doing what they need to do, and they're choosing what they like.
Right.
Is there anybody else from any other groups that wants to share out what y'all talked about?
I don't know that we determined whose birthday it was. But one of the things I heard that I really liked is we were talking about the choice boards and how kids might tend to just go with the quote unquote easy things.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my daughter in the background.
That's okay.
And one of our members was saying that their choice boards, you have to add up your activities so they make $1. So each one has a certain change value, so that they can't just say, okay, I'm going to do this easy thing across the board. It kind of forces them to do more or kind of differentiate.
I love that idea. And I've heard that before, in points, you have to do this many to get to 100. And then you'll have kids start saying, can I just get a 70 or, so I like the dollar idea, because then it's not it's not a grade. It's a different value, so that they can't say, can I only get 70 cents? No, you need $1.
My coworker, she's a teacher, but she's also, of course, since we're doing online learning and the kids are home, she has 3 kids, and that's kind of something that she's using. She has the tasks that they need to do throughout the day. Each task is awarded a certain amount of money. And she kind of went above and beyond. She went to Costco, kind of got a bunch of snacks and stuff like that. And then they could purchase different snacks. So it's kind of 2 things to get them to do their different tasks. And also it kind of regulates their snacking too. So kind of a mom and a teacher move combined into one. But so she took kind of that dollar idea that you were talking about and kind of said, okay, you can actually purchase things once you get to this certain amount as well.
Okay, sorry, I was typing in the chat box there. Yes, I love that. I love parents using that as an incentive too, kind of like a store. All right. I was typing that in the chat box, trying to sum that up. I love that. And then also last week I saved the chat box and I put it in last week's slides. I put a slide with the link, and I'll do that again this week. So, because y'all are having good discussions over there too.
Yeah, let me jump in and let's see who asked about advertising for high school students. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Barbara. I'm a huge believer that especially with your high school students, it starts with a relationship, knowing who they are. For me, it's all about a sense of humor and content knowledge, and then bringing those 2 together. But whatever it is that you can bring to the table, you strengthen relationships. And somebody just mentioned that stamps, Patricia, that stamps work well for high school students. I don't know if y'all remember eight-track tapes.
I do. They were my
They go
favorite.
way back to like the 70s and early 80s, I think. I used to go to the local Goodwill and I would buy boxes of 8-track tapes. I would put a white sticker on top and I would just write, way to stay on track. And I would give them out as awards to my high school seniors. Just recently, within the past year, one of my high school seniors, who's now almost 30, by the way, that makes me feel great, said that she still had it and she stuck it on Instagram and was showing it off. Students really will go for those stamps, those stickers, those little bitty things that are more really emotional than they are of monetary value. They will eat that up all day long.
Oh, I was adding the link here to last week. If you're wondering what I'm doing, Charles.
No, I
Should we,
trust.
should we go back to our Mentimeter next?
Yeah.
Are we ready for that? Let me pop us back into Mentimeter. And let me escape from this Mentimeter and go back. Had to use a second Mentimeter because I could only use 2 slides. Okay, here's our second Mentimeter. I like what you wrote, Charles. High school kids are basically taller elementary school kids.
Well, and let me throw this out while you're setting this up. So Barbara asked, what about the online environment? So for the past few years, I've been teaching online college students. So I'm not doing high school anymore, but online college. And these students are 18, 19, all the way up to, whatever, returning adults. The incentives that I use within are still, it's relationship based. How are you doing? Let me check in with you for 5 minutes. Even if you're comfortable doing something like that, like being able to hold some sort of contest, like if you do this extra credit, I'll enter you in a contest and then I can mail or drop off a scratch off ticket or a $5 gift card or a sticker maybe that you show online. It's, again, really, I think that the older you get, students value the relationship piece as opposed to the gum and lollipops and that piece.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So some of y'all are already entering answers. Thank y'all. So really what we want you to do is just kind of think about, if this would be your first time to do a choice board, what might you plan to do for that if you want to try one out? And if you've done them before, how might you change them based on kind of our discussion? And remember, we're thinking about this as an entry point to blended learning. So thinking about how are you going to use data to personalize learning for your students? So letting them know, and think back to that slide that we were on earlier. They have to know about themselves, maybe about their learning styles, or if you're going to base it, say, on Bloom's, you would need to let them see, okay, this is what Bloom's is. You're going to choose a high, a medium, and a low because that's the way we learn, So kind of letting them in on that data and then using that to help them choose their learning. Oh, I love that, Misty. Canvas has a new setting that gives confetti for submissions turned in on time.
Very cool. I didn't know that.
I'm going to turn that on ours. I love some of these things y'all are putting in here. So a lot of the things we've talked about. Y'all, I wish that we didn't have these whole I know right now we're at home, so it doesn't matter, but these whole food restrictions, because man, when I started teaching in the good old days, you could give them all kinds of incentives, Coke passes, candy passes, all kinds. You could have whatever the heck you wanted at school. We had a store in a closet down the hall, and you could send them to go buy, oh, you did this, you can go buy a Coke and drink it in class.
And honestly, I've said this ever since I've been working at the ESC when I left the classroom. If teachers would survey their students more, we would be out of jobs. We PD people would be out of jobs because the kids will tell you what they want. And so the questions about how do you incentivize for high school students or middle school students or elementary kids? I mean, it seems like a simple answer, but just ask them like, hey, what motivates you? And you can do that through a survey or just through a Zoom meeting, but they'll tell you what they want. And then I'm out of a job if everybody starts doing that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So maybe don't do that.
Let's keep it a secret. Just kidding. Okay, I'm going to pop to our next question. I love all these things that y'all are interested in trying. So what we want to challenge y'all to do too is if you're going to try one of these things, or even just start, planning it, join us next week, and we would love to hear back with how things went, what you tried, how it worked, all that kind of stuff, what you learned. And then we're going to dig deeper and move into more advanced into the pathways. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So as you're designing a choice board, what barriers might you anticipate? Maybe we can help give suggestions to each other to help. What's a barrier you think you might run into?
I know a barrier for me would be trying to figure out how do I create a choice board that's going to be inclusive of everybody.
Yeah. I think a barrier for me might even just be, coming up with so many ideas. You know what I mean? If you're going to fill out a choice board, that's a lot of ideas. Somebody just posted that too on there. So we've got a few resources for y'all. And then, really one of my favorite resources is really just looking at Bloom's taxonomy, at those big charts that have, activities, verbs, questions. Just using that even can help you come up with some ideas of things to do.
And then you saw this when not quizzes, Kahoot. When Kahoot got really popular, we would go around and do trainings on Kahoot and look at the data breakdown and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, across these campuses that we visited, all the teachers were all doing Kahoots a million times a day, and the kids got burnt out. And so again, with these choice boards, you're going to have a lot of teachers doing these. Try to differentiate them enough to where it's not like the same old every time they see one.
Mm-hmm. Somebody just posted that right when you said it too. Overuse.
Kahooted today.
And the other thing is that you don't have to do a 9 square board. You could do, some of y'all said you were worried about it being too much for the kids. Give them a 4 square board, or give them just 3 squares and let them pick, 2 of 3 or 1 of 3. You don't have to give them so many options to start with. Or color code it, pick either yellow or red or blue. And you do these 3 activities that are yellow, or these 3 that are blue, or these 3 that are red. So, you can help scaffold that for them too. Megan, do you have to pay for GimKit? Oh, she said, I don't think so. She said it's way cooler than Kahoot.
Yeah, I've heard fantastic things about GimKit. I've never touched it, but I keep hearing really, really good things about it.
Yeah, I do too. I haven't gone into it too. Oh, Misty said it's freemium.
Can I chime in on GimKit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
So yeah, freemium. I've only used the free. I did use it with 8th graders, and once I did, that was all they wanted to do ever, which was good. But it was one of those. Then I could incentivize that. But I think what my 8th graders dig about it is that it's very video gamey in terms of you can. It sounds terrible. You can inflict things upon other users. So if I want to use a freeze ray, I can click that. If I get the question right, I get the freeze ray, and then I get to choose who else in the game. Their screen's frozen for 30 seconds.
Oh, that's
and
fun.
So when I'm standing in the room and I'm watching them play, and the leaderboard's up on the big screen, you see kids, they'll pinpoint, strategize, right? Like, oh, this person's in the lead and I'm close. I'll freeze their screen with this question and so forth. So There's a setting in there that you can change where it's like only nice things or whatever, but basically you can either inflict pain on others or you can just do things to benefit you. But that in itself, with kids that aren't going to get too upset about it, it was very motivating. They're very excited, and they give each other dirty looks across the classroom when somebody freezes their screen or whatever. So it's fun for sure.
With GimKit, can the kids use it now, like when they're in different houses at different times?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can assign it. I don't quote me, but because like I said, I just did it in class.
Yeah.
But I do think do quote me, because I have a math teacher who got the link and shared it. And she did it a little bit differently with the competitive stuff. But she's used it. I haven't seen exactly what she did, but she told me that she copied the link into Canvas, sent it, and that was a sort of a different way to quiz some content.
And Patricia Flores just jumped in and said that you can do a quote unquote live game, which is kind of similar to what quizzes can do. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and Megan said the same thing about how she said once she did it with her kids, they were asking to play it every day. And Megan's a high school teacher. She does ASL at high school. So the high school kids loved it too. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, y'all. I'll have to go play with it now. Charles,
to get the students to be able to play at home just on their own by themselves, you have to make it an assignment.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
Charles, I'm going to set one up and me and you can play. He's like, great.
That sounds fun.
We're going to play school.
If y'all haven't noticed, Shelly's the one that gets super excited about emojis like she did earlier, jumps all into it, and then kind of pulls me into her world. And I'm super supportive.
Charles is like, yay, I'm not going to let Shelly listen to anybody talk about anything.
Yeah, I have to turn to my wife and go, I'm sorry, hold on, sweetheart. I have to jump into this real quick.
It's funny. Okay, so we had a couple, I know it's 11:03 already, and in case you need to go, let me just show you what else is in here for y'all. We put a few resources of different types of style, like learning styles. I know some of y'all said it's hard to come up with ideas, so here's some ideas. I'll go back and add some good Bloom's links too in here. And then just wanted to remind y'all about next week. So we did Friday last week, and our intention was to do Fridays. And tomorrow, Charles and I have to be in a TEA webinar at this time. So we had to do today, but next week we're going to go back to Friday, 10 to 11. We have the link to register. So today you can get credit by filling out the little form and get a certificate. But starting next week, we can't do that anymore. We got to go back to registering on our system. So if y'all want to join, you can just click the Zoom link and join next week. If you don't need a certificate, that's cool with us. But if you need a certificate, you'll have to register and you'll get credit in our system. And then anybody
Carry the tape.
Yeah, y'all have questions, pop them in there for us. And then of course our call to present at Leveraging Canvas is in there. Here's the link if you need a certificate. So it's in these slides for you, bit.ly/URock.edu credit with a capital U, capital R, and our contact.
Yeah, if you need street cred, we can't issue those certificates.
We don't have any street cred, right?
Yes, yeah, I see some of y'all laughing. Y'all know. Very cool. So there's our contact information. Please reach out anytime. And next week, you're going to really enjoy Jordan. She is just peppy, full of energy, and she knows what she's talking about when it comes to learning pathways in blended learning.
So it'll kind of be like stepping up your game to the next level from what we talked about today. So if y'all have questions, we'll hang out. And if not, thank y'all for joining us. We enjoyed being with y'all and chatting and all your awesome ideas. And I'm going to save the chat box right now before I forget.
Hey, I just learned for my kids that if you want to say like something is very cool or very whatever, you just say V. Like that's the cool way to do it. So
Just V?
yeah, like that's V cool.
Oh, you say V cool. You don't just say V.
Yeah.